This year for 2025, Badger just released a brand new limited edition airbrush. It's a side feed version of one of my personal favorite airbrushes of all time, the Sotar 2020. So this week, we're just going to be doing a first look and impressions of the Sotar side feed or the Sotar SF. Now, I only just received this airbrush a week ago. I've been using it every day, but I want to spend at least 6 months to a year with this one before making a full review of it. Because at this point right now, I've just been loving painting with this airbrush. It's clearly a Sotar 2020 since it shares the same head system, but it has a very different feel in the hand and some subtle changes that really surprised me. So just before we begin, the standard disclaimer that this is not an advertisement for Badger. I work alone. I don't accept any free products or special discounts. I pre-ordered this airbrush about 5 months ago back in January, and I paid $179 for it. This Sotar side feed came in nice simple packaging. It's a black cardboard sleeve covering a clear plastic box. It also comes with a small pouch for storage, which is nice to see, and since I opened this one already, you'll see that I added a Badger quick disconnect, and unfortunately it does not come with one of these. But what it does come with in this other little pouch is an adapter from their proprietary thread size to the standard 1/8. It is a side feed airbrush, so you do of course get a cup, and this one can be swapped on either the left or the right side of the airbrush, depending on if you're a lefty or a righty. There's a small plug pre-installed on the left side, and this cup is friction fit, and so far it's felt very secure on the right side of the airbrush body. And finally, you do get some documentation. It's the standard info that you'll get with any Sotar 2020, which has some really great information in it. The Sotar side feed comes equipped with a 0.2mm nozzle and the corresponding needle. It's an excellent airbrush for detail work. And that's what this airbrush does best. Fine lines, subtle blends, and transitions when you're working up close at a lower air pressure and reduced paint. The rear handle is a standard one that you're going to see from the normal Sotar 2020. I covered this a bunch of times. It's my favorite rear handle available today. And the main thing that I love about it is that you can loosen up the needle chucking nut and retract the needle right out of the back of the airbrush while that handle is still connected. There's also a limiter or a preset feature on the back of the airbrush so that you can preset your trigger distance if you like so you don't spray too much paint. And there is a hole in the back of this so that the needle can be retracted right through it, again, all while that rear handle is still connected. The airbrush comes with a relatively large paint cup that holds about 1/8 of an ounce of paint, which is about 3.5 milliliters. As I mentioned earlier, you can swap this paint cup between the left and the right side of the airbrush body. And of course, you do need to insert the plug that comes included with the airbrush on the opposite side. These are not threaded, they're both friction fit, so just apply a bit of pressure until you feel both snugly in place. Subjectively, just a personal preference, this cup does feel a little bit bulky to me, especially on a small airbrush like this one, so I've been playing around with a few different options over the last few days just to see if I can find a cup that I like a bit more. But for the time being in this video, I'm only going to be using the cup that came with this airbrush. It holds a fair amount of paint, it works great. The trigger is the standard Badger one with that round pad on top, and I've always loved this trigger because it just fits my grip very well. And the trigger pull on this one just feels perfectly smooth. Honestly, this is as good as it gets from any airbrush brand. It's a very soft action as well. Absolutely no sort of roughness or gritty feeling to the trigger. I think they did a perfect job on this one, and the responsiveness of that trigger is exactly like every other Sotar 2020. And if you'd like, you can adjust the resistance or the tension of that trigger by adjusting this screw with the rear handle removed. One thing that surprised me is the distance between the trigger and the nozzle. I didn't expect it to be this close. I think it's incredible, to be honest, because it's as close as your hand is going to get to the surface that you're painting than any other modern airbrush available today. My guess is that the body from this Sotar side feed might be the same one from the Badger 100 side feed. I can't confirm this because I only own a gravity-fed Badger 100, but looking at the pictures of the side feed version, it seems likely to me. I want to show you a quick comparison here. If you look at the triggers between the Sotar side feed and the standard gravity-fed Sotar, you can clearly see how much closer the trigger is to the nozzle on this new one. And here it is next to the Micron Takumi as well as the new Infinity 2024 by Harder and Steenbeck. Now the trigger distance to the nozzle is just a preference. I'm comfortable using all types of airbrushes, but if you want your hand really close to the surface that you're painting, the side feed Sotar is definitely an airbrush you want to check out. From here, let's move along to some close-up shots underneath the macro lens. I always get a few questions on what lens I use, so here it is again. It's the Nikkor MC50 connected to a Nikon Z5. And underneath that lens, I actually think the finish on the Sotar side feed looks great. Now I like to include these macro shots in the video so that you as a viewer can judge for yourself. Looking at this one, I wouldn't call it perfectly flawless, but it's very nicely made. And as I mentioned in a few other videos, that this macro lens is just very unforgiving. Under the bright video lights, filmed in 4K, it's going to show everything. And as I'm watching this footage now and doing the voiceover for this video, I have to say that the finish looks really nice to me. You'll see here that the nozzle is nicely centered within the front of the airbrush, which always makes me happy to see. And the only real imperfection that I was able to find here wasn't actually on the airbrush itself. It was on the side wall of the paint cup. You'll see it right here on the inside wall. It's something that I noticed, so I wanted to point it out. I'm not going to be doing a full breakdown of this side feed Sotar just because I already showed this multiple times in a few videos. I'll have one of those linked up above, and the internal parts here are exactly the same as the other Sotar 2020s that I've shown. The only difference is the body casing that they're housed in. The real changes in this model are up front. Just like the older Sotar models, the head system on this airbrush is fully removable. I have one of the wrenches here from one of the original Sotars, and you can see that I can unscrew this entire head system. I've always liked this original design with the removable nozzle base. You can see the 3 holes in the back here which direct the airflow over the nozzle, and the PTFE seal that's placed around the back of it. I found that if I do need to manually clean this out, that it's so much easier to do it all in one piece like it is here than it is to take out each part and clean out that tiny nozzle tip. And one thing that I want to mention is every time I get a Badger airbrush, what I like to do is seal up all of the threads so that there's no air leaks. I like to use real beeswax up front for the spray regulator and the paint tip hold down ring, both of those threads. And then around the air valve assembly, I use some Teflon or PTFE tape to seal that up as well. I noticed that the bottom of the paint cup was seeping a little bit of water when I had it placed in there, so I sealed that up with Teflon tape as well. The whole process probably took me about 5 to 10 minutes for all of those seals, and this airbrush is perfectly airtight now. I want to show you the responsiveness of this trigger, which has always been my favorite thing about the Sotar 2020. If you look here, I'm just spraying a few dots. But what I want you to focus on is my trigger finger. You'll see that I'm barely moving it. All I'm doing is applying a little bit of pressure backwards and it releases paint. And I'm not lifting my trigger finger up. I'm spraying air the entire time. All I'm doing is applying a little bit of pressure backwards. That very small movement on the trigger retracts the needle the slightest bit backwards. It allows the airbrush to release paint. Then when I move that trigger forward, it seals off the nozzle and stops spraying. To check the consistency of the spray pattern, I'm spraying a continuous line here. You can see that it's perfect, no breaks, no skipping within the paint. For these tests, I'm using Schmincke Aero Colors reduced 1:1 with distilled water. I'm spraying around 20 psi, and you can see here how nice it atomizes the paint. Very soft blends. No surprises at all here. This airbrush sprays exactly like all my other Sotar 2020s. From here, I wanted to test out some of the details, so I'm writing out the word airbrush in print on a matchstick. The airbrush is doing an excellent job. The control is perfect, but one thing that I struggled with here is the size of that paint cup. I normally spray perpendicular to the surface, but sometimes when I'm going in for detail, I just angle the airbrush slightly over to the right so I can see the needle across the side of the airbrush. And while I was doing this, one thing that I kept noticing happening was the side of the cup was bumping into the surface. Over the next few months while I'm working with this airbrush, I will test out a few different cups, see if I can get one that's a little bit smaller that fits this airbrush properly. On this larger painting that I'm still in the very early stages of, I've been using this airbrush on it for the past few days and it's been fantastic. I'm just painting a few of the wrinkles in right now. Just a few of these very small wrinkles, kind of like texture underneath the larger ones above it, and the airbrush sprays perfectly. It's an airbrush that I'm just very comfortable working with. The control is excellent. It always does exactly what you want. There's no guessing with this one. And one thing that I'm noticing is that the airspeed on this model seems to be lower than the standard gravity-fed one as well. Later on this year, I will be making a video comparing my favorite 4 or 5 detail airbrushes, and I'll be sure to include all the data, like things like airspeed, the weight, spray angle, all that stuff. But before I make that video, I still need to spend a lot more time with this airbrush and the Infinity 2024. So that's it for my initial impressions on this new Sotar side feed. It's a very impressive little airbrush so far, and I really look forward to putting in the hours with it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you back here next week.